This movie is so mediocre. I actually heard a lot of good things about Total Recall, and so I went to see it because of that. And I just want to ask, like, the movie critics of YouTube, are we endorsing mediocrity now? I just want to know. This has the exact same story as the original, only they just took the Mars bit out of it. It's still a story about the haves versus the have-nots, although now I'm detecting an even stronger isolationist message. And I don't know why people are saying that this is more faithful to the original Philip K. Dick short story. The original short story actually had Mars in it, and actually there is an element of the short story that is in the remake and not the original Total Recall movie as I remember it, and that is the idea that you can't really implant memories that are already there, so you cannot replace. If a fake memory is identical to a real memory, you cannot implant it. The main difference between the original Total Recall and the remake is that the original could not lean on special effects and CGI and action scenes. I mean, they had those things and they did pretty innovative stuff for that time, the mid-80s. But it's the difference between the story driving the action and the action driving the story, which is what happens in the case of the remake. You could tell that they came up with this stupid, convoluted story that makes no sense, just so they could have their car chases, just so they could have their action scenes, just so they can have Colin Farrell running on top of rooftops. And without a good story, you can't really have good acting. Colin Farrell was terrible in this. You see, in the original, there was a very clear difference between Douglas Quaid and the person that he was before the fake memory implant. And that is, that person was a douchebag. And you can understand why Douglas Quaid would not want to go back to being a douchebag. In the case of the remake, there's really no clear definition between this Douglas Quaid that we see in the movie, the old one, the one that he's supposed to come back to, because he's actually not going to return to Carl Hauser, which is the original, but to another Carl Hauser, which actually didn't turn. And it's like, who is this character actually? Kate Beckinsale, I think, is the only one that actually had fun making this because she got to be the villain. But outside of that, even her acting was completely over the top. So I hated it. I really did. And not because of some nostalgic bullshit like, oh, I grew up with the original and the original should never be remade. No. It's because it's a mediocre science fiction movie that only cares about the action. And you know, when you have actors like Bill Nighy and John Cho, and you give them nothing to do, and they only show up in the movie for like 2 minutes, you know, it said something. It says that you have these great actors, but either you couldn't give them anything to do, or you just didn't care about giving them anything to do. Either way, I probably hate your ass as a producer.